Harihi Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Brinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so now we're at the point where the Pandavas have married Draupadi. They're allied with Drupad. They've received all these wonderful gifts. So now then they also have the support of Krishna and Balaram. And so the kings now, they know all this, because this would have all happened the next day. And so then the kings all go back to their respective places. So that means Duryodhana and the Kauravas, they go back also. So then when they arrive back in Hastinapur, then now the news gets around. The Kauravas entered their capital sorrowful and ashamed. They were also anxious. Drupad was a powerful enemy. As Duryodhana entered his palace, Vidura met him. Hearing the news from Panchala, Vidura's face lit up with delight. Despite Duryodhana's machinations, the Pandavas were thriving. Surely the Lord was protecting those virtuous princes. Vidura went at once to Dhritarashtra and said, "By good fortune, the Kurus have been successful and are prospering." The blind king replied joyfully, "What luck, what luck?" Not knowing that Vidura was referring to the Pandavas. He thought, because he says the Kauravas, because the Pandavas technically are Kauravas, but they definitely look at it, they're Pandavas, not Kauravas. So he's not looking at it in that. Plus, as far as he knows, the Pandavas are dead. So if you say the Kauravas, they're not even in the picture, so that means Duryodhana. He thought that perhaps Duryodhana had won Draupadi. He immediately ordered ornaments to be made for Draupadi and asked that she and Duryodhana be brought into the palace in great pomp. When then Vidura informed him of the facts, Draupadi had chosen the Pandavas for her lords, and now the 5 heroes were strongly allied with Drupad and his many relatives and friends, right? Because Drupad means everyone connected with Drupad. And then you have the Yadavas, you have Dwarka. So now they're in a very powerful position. Because we have to remember is that Drupad considers himself an enemy of the Kauravas because of their coming and with Drona and capturing and giving so much trouble to the city. But he was impressed with the character and that of Arjuna, so he wanted to be related with him. So he liked the Pandavas, he didn't like the Kauravas. So it's not that, okay, we're all family now, so therefore is that, he just doesn't really like them. Dhritarashtra sat forward in surprise, reaching out for Vidura's hand. "This is wonderful news. Those boys are dearer to me than they were to Pandu. My affection for them is now greater than it ever was," right? Because, that they died and then you find that they're alive, then the affection comes up more. That's at least the presentation. "Their success and good fortune is mine also." Yeah, because they're all same family, so technically it should be. Vidura smiled. "O king, may these feelings remain for 100 summers," right? May you always think like this. He then left to give the good news to Bhishma. The king was left alone with Duryodhana and Karna. Both had remained silent as Vidura had spoken. But as soon as he left, they jumped to their feet and loudly criticized him, right? So they just sit there because he's senior. The two of them are senior. They're interacting. So they leave it. But as soon as he leaves, then immediately, then they have to say something. Clasping his sword in its ornate scabbard by its side, Duryodhana said, "Father, how are you considering our enemies' success to be your good fortune? That is foolish. We need to weaken the Pandavas and deprive them of their fortune, not rejoice in it. Otherwise they will surely swallow us with all our kinsmen, armies, friends, and wealth." Karna growled in agreement, and both he and Duryodhana stood in front of the king waiting for his reply. So even though they have these kind of feelings, they still have that element of respect, of authority in that, and following. He's the king, so what he says, that's what they go with. But because of Dhritarashtra's attachment, he's always going to support his son. So the funny point is the Pandavas there, they'll come back, they'll rule nicely, give Duryodhana and all his, his brothers nice positions and everything, and that everybody's taken care of. In other words, the Pandavas would take care of the Kauravas very nicely. But we see as the Kauravas can't tolerate the Pandavas at all. So it's a character fault on their side. So because they have a character fault, they see the rest of the world in that same way. So they think, this is what been doing to them, they'll do the same to us. They don't understand. They're in another category, the Pandavas. Dhritarashtra was silent for some time. Finally, wringing his hands, he said, I desire exactly as you desire. However, I did not want to reveal my feelings to Vidura. He should not even know that I am thinking by my he should not even know what I am thinking by my demur. Therefore, I praise the Pandavas in his presence. And not that Vidura doesn't know this, but that he said it and made that. May you think like this, The king asked Duryodhana how he and Karna planned to handle the situation. The prince replied that they should employ every diplomatic and devious means to bring about the Pandavas' downfall. Right? He just uses political things like this and that. Karna likes straightforward, he just likes political. He suggested that spies be employed to create disunity between the 5 brothers, or that Drupad and his ministers be swayed from supporting the Pandavas by tempting them with wealth. Perhaps Draupadi could be turned against them if beautiful women are used to seduce the brothers. Or maybe Bhima could be secretly killed. He was the mainstay of the Pandavas' power, and without him they could easily be overpowered. Right? So Duryodhana will see him as the mainstay, Bhima, because he's strong like 10,000 elephants, good at club, just like Duryodhana. So Duryodhana sees that rivalry that's there. Arjuna, he doesn't really consider him that way, even though Arjuna is really their difficulty. Duryodhana concluded, use whatever means you deem best, father. Somehow we must bring the Pandavas under our control without delay. Their strength increases with every passing day. He's not seeing that it's due to their character and their devotion to the Lord and that. They just see it set, they just see the politics. The Kaurava prince turned to Karna and asked him for his opinion. Karna raised a clenched fist. His voice boomed out in reply. Duryodhana, in my view, your suggestions are not well considered. I do not think that any intrigues will succeed against the Pandavas. You've already tried and failed in this way on various occasions. It will surely fail again. Right? So he's a very strong friend and ally of Duryodhana. So his pointing out the fault is for Duryodhana's benefit. It's not just, friends having an argument or he wants to establish his position. He's just pointing out, no, the way you're thinking, it hasn't worked in the past. If you continue thinking like this, it will fail again. Karna pointed out that the Pandavas had formerly been living near them in Hastinapur. They had been mere children without allies or friends, and still Duryodhana's scheming had not been successful, right? They were young, they had no allies, nobody supporting, and Duryodhana couldn't get rid of them. Now, they're mature, they're married, they're allied with very powerful forces. Why will now it work? The same thing. Now the brothers were grown up and secured powerful allies, and most importantly, were on their guard against the Kauravas, right? Because before that, they were relaxed. Now they know the core of the Kauravas' position. They would detect and thwart any plan Duryodhana set in motion. Nor would the Kauravas be able to break Draupadi's affection for her husbands. She chose them when they appeared as poor Brahmins. How would she reject them now that they were prosperous? Nor would the virtuous Drupad abandon them for the sake of wealth, even if the Kauravas offered him their entire kingdom. Because for him, he's more about the character in that also. You can see just in this how he dealt and why he wanted the connection with Arjuna, how he was so happy that the connection with the Pandavas. And at the same time as he doesn't like the Kauravas. Because they're just too political. Karna's eyes flashed as he spoke, right? So he's very enthusiastic. His natural golden armor gleamed in the shafts of sunlight that shone through the palace windows. He turned to the king and continued, "O sire, here is what I think we should do. Before the brothers are fully established, let us strike them down on the battlefield. We must challenge them before Drupad has time to assemble his allies, to fight alongside them, and before Krishna and Balaram can bring the mighty Yadava host from Mathura." Yeah, because now they're in Mathura, so they're not so far away from Hastinapur. Because that Delhi and Mathura, they're fairly close. This is before they've moved to Dwarka, so they're much closer now. Karna went on to praise strength and prowess as the cardinal virtues in Kshatriyas, which they are more, but at the same time as authority and devotion. He disliked Duryodhana's and Shakuni's treacherous methods, and he would rather settle the issue in an honest trial of arms. That was the only noble way to tackle the Pandavas. The other three means of diplomacy, conciliation, bribery, or dissension, would all provide useless, right? So Duryodhana always looks for these three, and Karna always looks for the fourth, or, battle. The Kurus should immediately gather an army and march on Drupad's capital, crushing both him and the Pandavas at the same time. Then the world would be theirs to command, free of thorns, because then you won't have the Pandavas, you won't have Drupad, and this. And so then, in their thinking, that now the world is free for them to rule. But the point is they already have the kingdom to rule. Dhritarashtra's the king. Yudhishthira's not saying anything, but it's time that now that Yudhishthira's of age, and especially now that they're married, people will want him to be the king. So it's the people that want, and so that's the difficulty here. Dhritarashtra praised Karna for his courageous speech. Turning his face towards the king of Anga, he said, "Such words, full of heroism and power, surely befit you, heroic one. But let us consult Bhishma, Drona, and Vidura before taking any action, because if they're going to go to battle, they have to have these other three. These men will always counsel what is in our best interests, right? So they're going to counsel in best interest for the throne. That's what's going to be. Now, whether what they advise is what Duryodhana likes, but what they're counseling is best for the throne. Not best for the Pandavas, best for the throne. So for them, Dhritarashtra's in the throne, therefore they will see that it goes nicely in that way. Dhritarashtra summoned his counselors, one by one. Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Vidura arrived, and sat upon the golden seats around the king's throne. When they were settled in their places, the king told them the views of both Duryodhana and Karna, and asked for their opinions. Bhishma spoke first. "O Dhritarashtra, I can never consent to a quarrel with the Pandavas. Pandu's sons and your sons are equally dear to me. They deserve my protection equally. The Pandavas should be given half the kingdom. Of this there is no doubt. As much as you feel this kingdom to be your property, so too do the Pandavas feel it to be theirs. If it is not their birthright, then how can it ever be yours?" Right? So it means, in other words, the Pandavas, Dhritarashtra, he's the eldest, but he's blind, so he can't be the king. So that means it goes to the second brother, to Pandu. And so naturally, once it's gone to Pandu, it means it will go down through Pandu's line, not through Dhritarashtra's line. And so then Dhritarashtra, because Pandu's in the forest, or when Pandu died, then he's managing the kingdom. And so then he's now considering it should go down through my line, when it's just, no, he's just managing on behalf of Pandu until his sons are of age. Just like Bhishma is managing as regent. So if he's considering, no, the kingdom should be mine, when he's blind and not actually supposed to have it, then how much more would the Pandavas think that way? Because it's their father's kingdom. Indeed, their claim comes before yours. Therefore, conclude a treaty and hand over half of this kingdom to them. Do this for your own good. So he's saying, because Duryodhana is worried they're going to come in and take everything. But Bhishma is saying, no, the kingdom is definitely theirs, and you're also thinking, so give them half. That way then they have, and then you don't lose the whole thing. Okay, you only have half, but you maintain your position. Bhishma then explained what would happen if they declined to make peace with the Pandavas. The Kauravas would be covered with dishonor. All virtuous men would censure them. Having lost their reputation, their existence would become useless. Bhishma looked around the council chamber as he spoke. It is fortunate for us that Kunti's sons still live. It is fortunate that Kunti herself still lives, and it is fortunate that the sinful Purochana met his end. From the day I heard that Kunti and her sons had perished in the fire, I could not face any living creature. Right? Because he knows that all that Purochana is their man, that arrangement for the palace was made by Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, so that, and the people were all talking that it's their fault, that Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra's fault. So therefore he couldn't, face anybody. Bhishma asked Dhritarashtra if he knew how the citizens felt. They had blamed the Pandavas' death on the king. That the brothers had survived would repair his reputation, right? So if the Pandavas come back, they don't deal with them nicely, then they'll just see they always deal badly. So no one's going to like the Kauravas. So if the Pandavas are alive, then you can see they didn't die. So then that aspect will be gone. Now if they give them half the kingdom, then they'll be in the good books with the people also. Dhritarashtra should now take advantage of that good fortune and make amends with the Pandavas by awarding them their kingdom. They were virtuous, united, and ever protected by the Supreme Lord. Even Indra with all the gods could not deprive them of their rights. If you desire justice, the welfare of all, and my pleasure, then give half the kingdom to these boys. Right? So justice would be just welfare, then everybody will be peaceful, there's no war. And Bhishma's pleasure, because he sees they're all all of his grandchildren, so he wants to see that they're all taken care of. Bhishma sat down, looking across at Duryodhana, who breathed heavily and ground his teeth, right? Because his thing is that they're saying what's actually right for the kingdom. That's the difficulty with Duryodhana. He's got such impurity in his heart, such envy. He can't see that this is actually what's good for the kingdom. He takes it right to the end where everything is destroyed. And only when he's dying and knows he's going to die, then it's okay, well then, and everybody on his side, all his brothers are dead, everybody's dead. So then, naturally, the family line should go on, so it would be in the Pandavas. So that's why he was upset when Draupadi's sons were killed, because they'll carry on the line. Because otherwise, after the Pandavas, they would naturally go to the forest, and they would carry on. So the Kurus would last. Otherwise, then what will happen is the Kurus. It's like after this, who hears about the Kurus? Right? It means you're going to have, Parikshit Maharaj and Janamejaya, and that's it. And they're gone. For thousands and thousands of years they've been ruling, and now because of Duryodhana, it's all gone. The prince stared at the floor as Drona stood up to speak. "O sire, it is said that counselors should always speak what is right, true, and conducive to the king's welfare and fame. My opinion then is the same as Bhishma's. Return the kingdom to the Pandavas. Send a messenger skilled in diplomacy to Drupad, along with many gifts, and tell him how the alliance of his house with the house of Kuru has enhanced your power and dignity. O king, this will undoubtedly be in your best interest, because he's an enemy. But by marrying the Pandavas, and then the Kurus accepting the Pandavas, that means now Drupad accepts the Kurus. Now they're all allied, they're all related. So that is the best for diplomacy. But he only sees as what he feels, that's the authority, rather than, no, Dharma Shastra says this, Dharma is this is how the king should act, it's what's best for the people, all these different aspects like that. He doesn't see that at all. He only sees what's best for him. So that's why the whole point in the beginning that he should never have continued as a prince. He should have been given to the tribals in the forest, grown up there, and then he could be jealous and envious and fight and become the chief of the tribe or something. Drona advised that Drupad be told how happy both Dhritarashtra and his son have become by all that has happened. The Pandavas should be brought back in state to Hastinapur. Right? So that means in state, means in all pomp and glory. They should then be installed in their paternal kingdom. This was the people's desire. The Pandavas are no less Dhritarashtra's sons than his own offspring. He should treat them equally. But he's even saying about just give him the kingdom, because he was the Yuvaraj, Yudhishthira, so he was supposed to be the king. He was crowned Yuvaraj, and then they sent him off. So he's just saying give him the kingdom. Bhishma's saying give half the kingdom. But they're both saying they hope you have to deal with him nicely. When Drona finished speaking, Karna sprang from his seat. He could take no more. Breathing heavily, his brow furrowed, he thundered, "How surprising that these two so-called ministers should tender such advice. Although you have supported them, O king, they do not look to your good. While concealing the wickedness in their hearts, they speak words purporting to be in your interests." Right? So this is the demoniac quality, is that when it's actually proper advice, good advice, is how things will go, because it doesn't please them, their mind, their feelings. They think it's inimical. Because that's the point, is that mode of goodness is that you follow the Shastras, what is proper in Shastras, what it recommends. That's what you do, and you try to bring yourself in line with that. Mode of passion means you use the Shastras and that to get, for your own purposes to get what you want. So you'll use the Shastra how you want, when you want, rather than as the Shastra is defining it. So you see is that Karna, Duryodhana, his brothers, then they all work in this mode of passion and ignorance. That's why you see they will destroy the kingdom. Karna fumed. Bhishma's and Drona's advice was useless, right? That's his idea. A man's happiness and distress depend upon destiny alone. Another person's acts could in no way affect anyone. Everything was fixed by fate. If in the course of destiny Dhritarashtra acquired the throne, then who could oppose that? So, you understand? He's saying, its destiny is that Dhritarashtra got the throne, therefore who can complain about it? But at the same time, he's saying destiny, so everything was fixed. Another person's act could no way affect. But at the same time, they're working their best acting to get rid of the Pandavas. But the other ways, why they should do it's destiny. So you can see is that these kind of irrational ways of thinking, why should they fear the Pandavas? Dhritarashtra had become the king by fate's arrangement. And if fate decreed it, then he would remain in that position, no matter what anyone said or did. But at the same time, with that, if the Pandavas come back and the kingdom's given to them, that's fate. But they won't accept. Karna looked angrily at both Bhishma and Drona as he concluded his speech. These two have spoken out of fear of or favoritism towards the Pandavas. O king, judge for yourself the motives of your ministers. Then do what you feel is right. Because that's the whole point. Ministers advise. They're not actually the one making the decision. So because they're not making it, they're not responsible either. Right? The king makes the decision. He's responsible. So this is the interesting thing in the Vedic system, that you have the advisors, or the Brahmins, or the ministers, or those that are, in one sense, elder to the king. But they're not the ones that manage the kingdom. It means the king manages. They may assist the king in doing it, and they have their responsibilities. But the overall responsibility is the king's. So then that means if there's any glory, it goes to the king. But that means if there's any mistake, it also goes to the king. Now, the king, if he's following the advice of his ministers and they give bad advice, he can get new ministers. But that's the interesting thing, is that the senior person is giving advice, but they're not the one controlling it. And the junior person is controlling it, but he's taking the advice of the senior. Why we see in outside of the Vedic system that the person who is the senior, he's also the one that controls. So you don't have this balance. The modern thing is always about balance of power, but they don't actually do that. They just keep equals from getting too much power. Basically, they don't want anyone to get too much power. But they don't do it in a personal way. It's just administrative. So it's just controlled. You can't do this, you can't do that. Rather than it's the personal, you have respect out of good qualities, out of character. Then that's leadership. So in other words, people are looking at management, how to keep the balance of power. But you actually have to do the balance of power through leadership, how that works. Dhritarashtra remained silent, but Drona again spoke out. Karna, you have spoken only out of envy of the Pandavas. Due to your attachment for Duryodhana, you desire only to injure the Pandavas. You should know that what I have said is certainly for the benefit of this house. If we act otherwise, then in my opinion, the Kurus will be exterminated. And which will happen. Vidura had been observing this situation closely. Now it was his turn to speak. He could see by Dhritarashtra's demur and silence that he was uncertain. Right? In other words, he was siding with Duryodhana if they could work it out, but when they call everybody else, then he becomes uncertain, because factually it is true. He is trained. He actually knows what's correct. And if it's anything but his son and his son's desire, he knows exactly how properly to do things. But because of his attachment to his son, he's unable to apply his knowledge in that area. So that's where it becomes a problem. The intelligent minister stood and addressed the king. "O sire, after careful consideration, I cannot think of any better friends to you than Bhishma and Drona. They have spoken what is for your certain good, but you do not accept their advice. The foolish Karna may disagree with them, but their words are meant only for your welfare. It has never been seen that they gave you bad advice at any time. They are experienced, wise, and learned in Scripture. Neither of them are in any way less than Rama, the great son of Dasarath. They regard your sons of the Pandavas with equal eyes. Why then do you disregard their counselor?" Vidura then gave his own views of the situation. Dhritarashtra's partiality towards his own sons would lead to his downfall. The Pandavas were powerful and fixed in virtue. They could not be overcome by force. Indeed, they were capable of withstanding even the gods in battle, right? And they're saying, "Oh, we should march out now," right? Karna's idea, and beat him before they can be ready. But Drupad's even farther away than Mathura, so you're not going to notice the battles moving. You're not going to be able to see these things. They're going to get by Krishna first. How they're going to do. Krishna himself went out, just Krishna and his charioteer and a small group of men. He fought with Jarasanda's Akshauhini, one Akshauhini, just himself, destroyed all of them down to the last man. And not one of Krishna's men were injured. Right? And so it's just illusion that they think like this. But the point is that's the demoniac mentality. It's always an illusion. Besides the mighty Drupad, they had Krishna and Balaram as allies. There was no doubt that wherever there was Krishna, there would be victory. Yes, so we'll stop here. And then we'll see next, what does Dhritarashtra do? What is the plan? Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.